Today we have a wonderful lady on the show. Her name is Deb Herdman. She is originally a registered nurse, and she has found her way into becoming a sleep expert. She has incredibly scientifically backed up strategies to be able to help children and adults alike to be able to overcome insomnia, to be able to help their kids with sleep, and everything in between. So, Deb, thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you so much, Paul. Great to talk to you both.
Deb, we had a chat last week or 2 weeks ago, as it were, and I'm very, very upset with my lack of punctuality on that chat. I've been beating myself up for the last 2 weeks, but it was so lovely to meet you and get to know all about what it is that you do and the people that you help. And I always say that sleep, and it is my philosophy, sleep is the tide that rises all other health boats. And to be an authority in this space, I think is one of the most important roles that you can play in the health space. So I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about how you found your way into becoming an expert in sleep and, how you've been able to help people today.
Absolutely. I guess I have not a unique beginning to my journey, experiencing lack of sleep within the household. And in my case, it came with the birth of the third child, who was my problem sleeper. If you're a parent, you're familiar with kids that won't nap in the daytime and won't nap unless you're holding them in their arms or constantly waking up. So that was my beginning journey. I didn't really like the methodology that was out there at the time, and I had planned on homeschooling this child, so it's a bit of a strange leap over to this part of the conversation. And in the process of the sleep was really by the by. I was working night shift in a neonatal unit with newborns. So combination of night shift and not getting enough sleep when I was, off duty was horrible, I can tell you. And in my quest to homeschool this child, I decided to learn music and commenced with an amazing music teacher. And in my second year, I composed some music, which is called Nigh Nigh Sleepyhead, which is music that I've used with my child that helped him learn how to sleep, and decided that I would form a business with some other resources. And initially I just thought I'd be selling the products, but as time went on, more and more people, particularly parents, geared at parents at that point, were asking me questions, and I've furthered my knowledge in the sleep space. And then I was able to hook up with an amazing researcher and educator and do some really solid science-backed training, which has opened my door up really to helping all ages overcome insomnia, with training in cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia.
It's I'm just sort of listening to you talk there, Deb. I think it's what's that, Paulie?
I just said you're going to have a field day with this.
I'm going to have an absolute field day with it. That's very true. I think I had about 14 questions that arose now. I think you spoke for like 3 minutes. So it's this is going to be an interesting show. If you got a lot of time, Deb, then we'll book you in for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
I think one of the first things that came to mind there, what you said a phrase there, which I thought was really interesting. You said, like, I help people learn how to sleep. I can imagine like a lot of people listening to that going, what do you mean learn how to sleep? I've been doing this ever since I sort of came out of the womb. Like when you say learn how to sleep, I know that's a broad topic there, and we can go into many different avenues. Is it more about preventative measures to make the actual sleeping easier, or are there actual techniques and practices and things that we all need to know to I suppose develop the skill of sleeping?
Well, certainly there are practices that you need to know to be able to get back with good sleep, because we know sleep is a changeable thing. You can be the best sleeper in the world, and then all of a sudden, for sometimes no reason at all, it goes pear-shaped. We know that from 6 months of age, babies have all the biology to sleep well. So when you hear parents and forums, etc., that say babies just take their time, they'll learn how to sleep eventually. No, they actually have all the biology in place by 6 months. And if they're not sleeping well by then, it's because something's happened that's changed the way they've learned to sleep. And often that change has become associated with a parent needing to do something to help them go to sleep and stay asleep. So I always say to anybody, you can always learn to sleep better, because the behaviors that you're doing are often the reason why you're not able to get into good sleep, even though you might look up Google and follow everything, you know, on the web, or go to your doctor, go to various other places. If they don't have the training behind them, they're not going to know the therapies in how to help you learn to sleep well.
So Deb, in your experience, and this is a kind of a big one, and we can kind of feel free to flesh this out, but what have been the 3 biggest challenges that you have experienced, A, with adults when it comes to getting sleep quality, and then B, with children or babies?
Oh, good question. I think for most adults, if they're willing to be committed to learning how to sleep, they have great results. But the problem with adults is they often go down that rabbit hole of they've tried everything and nothing, they believe nothing will work. They believe nothing can help them. And unfortunately, that's the way it is for a lot of adults. Hence, we have, 48% of adults in Australia have 1 to 2 sleep problems.
Oh, wow.
And I talk to people all the time and they say, oh, I sleep terribly. And that's where the conversation stops, because they're not willing, or they don't understand that actually you can be helped. You just haven't had the right therapy to be able to get you there. Mm. With parents, unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation out there about children's sleep. And it's unfortunate that parents don't get the right information. If they knew that their baby had insomnia, they might think about sleep a whole different way.
Geez, that's interesting, isn't it? I'm just like hearing all the tea. I can't believe that that's so just under half of the population of Australian adults have issues with sleeping. Yeah. I know that my personal experience, little things like red lights at night, or blue light blockers. I think the biggest one for me, just off the top of my head, was eating no later than 3 hours prior to bedtime has probably had the biggest impact. That's probably been like the biggest variable for me that's helped with my sleep, but alongside a sort of normal circadian rhythm or common pattern of circadian, like trying to get up at the same time. My mind went to what it must be like, what it must have been like for you, Deb, being a nurse, and working night shifts and things like that. Are you guys completely is it futile for you guys to get good sleep when you're doing that? Or is it, for someone listening who's doing the night shift at the moment, is there anything they can do?
If you're going to do night shift, if you're a night owl, then night shift is going to suit you, because your chronotype is geared towards going to bed late and sleeping in. So those are the things that are ideal for when you come off night shift. You can get yourself back into your rhythms fairly easily. But if you're an early bird and you're doing night shift, oh God, it's a struggle. Just having to stay awake later than what you'd normally be going to bed. You're preparing to go to work when you're normally going to bed at, between, 9:30 and 10:30. And then having to, it's just not conducive to good work practice if your chronotype doesn't match your work.
Yeah.
It's you're essentially you're jet lagged every day,
Yeah.
Have you read the book? I'm sure you know a great deal about it. I'm just trying to find the name of the book. I think it's called The Magic of When, or
who's the author?
I'll get it for you, and I should be.
This is the open loop. This is the to be continued.
Yes, the to be continued, but it's heavily discussing chronotypes, and they refer to different animals.
Oh, I love this topic. Let's talk about this.
Okay.
There are only two animals in the space of chronotype, night owl and early bird. All of those other things are lovely little marketing. Hey, look at me. Let's draw some attention to myself and let's call sleep. All sorts of other things like you sleep like a dog, a bear, etc., etc. In the scientific realm, there's only early bird and night owl.
Got it. And a night owl is a legitimate, credible chronotype to be?
Yeah, so exactly. So you're one of those people that prefer to go to sleep later and you prefer to sleep in the morning. So if you're required to get up at 6 o'clock to go to work or 7 o'clock, you're going to struggle. You're not going to get enough sleep hours. Hence, exactly what happens with teenagers.
I want to touch on teenagers in a moment, but I want to also just follow up with that question. How do you know if you're a legitimate night owl or you have just habitually, like I used to play music all the time. I was like that's what I did as a career in my 20s, and I was up late all the time, right? I was also a personal trainer, so I was like a night owl and an early bird. So it was really hard for me. But I know musicians who are up playing gigs starting at midnight. You know, regardless of whether you're a night owl or an early bird, you're a night owl. But are you a legitimate night owl?
It all depends on what happens on your time off, on your holidays. What sort of sleep patterns do you follow? What's your preference? If you still prefer to go to bed later on your holidays or time off and you're given the opportunity, now this is all about opportunity to sleep in, and you naturally sleep in, you're a night owl. So I often speak to parents and ask them about their chronotypes because we know that is an inherited process in our children. So if mum and dad are a night owl and an early bird, the child's going to have a preference for one or the other. Okay. So often I'll hear mum say, oh, I'm definitely a night owl. I always go to bed later after 11 o'clock. But then I wake up early. So when I ask them, that's something that I need to dig a bit deeper on. So what would happen to you on the weekend if you didn't have to get up? What would happen to you on your holidays when you don't have to get up? And they would say, oh, I always wake up early. I said, well, you're actually an early bird type. You're not a night owl. It's just that you're allowing yourself to stay up later. And for those sorts of people, typically what you just described, Paul, that you went to bed late and you got up early and you missed out on some sleep hours recently, that's exactly what happens for a lot of parents or a lot of people. They don't take the opportunity to go to sleep when they feel sleepy. And if they're early birds, then they wake up, they might miss half an hour of sleep and then accumulate that over the course of the week. That could be 7 hours of missed sleep.
For the people listening, I was explaining that a couple of nights ago, I had under 5 hours sleep, and I woke up feeling hungover with half a brain, and I felt like half a man as well.
Exactly. But that's because you had 3 bottles of vodka, though, right?
And 2 tequilas, yes.
Yeah, a couple of tequilas. Yeah. Just that little detail, Paulie. Well, Deb, I'm interested in this thing. That was one of my questions as well when we started speaking about chronotypes. Like, I just imagine there'd be so many confounding variables when it comes to the scientific literature about, like, you know, who you are. And, you know, I can almost, I'm sure you would have heard this before as well. Like, you know, there's been times in my life where I have probably been more of a night owl, as opposed to more of a morning lark or sort of an early bird. Is that something that changes across the lifespan, or is it pretty consistent?
It is fairly consistent, but there are times when it does change temporarily, or we hope it's temporarily. And those changes occur when you get to adolescence. So that's why teenagers struggle with going to bed. It's not because they're on their screens. It's not because they're on their phones. It's always been this way long before those devices were ever around. They struggle to fall asleep at the normal time they would have fallen asleep pre-adolescence. And that delay can be up to 2 hours.
And what's the scientific reasoning behind this?
It's purely a biological process related to adolescence. So a hormone shift,
right.
It just goes with the territory. We call it delayed sleep delayed sleep-wake phase disorder. And so that can actually become quite a permanent thing if it's not corrected, and takes quite intense therapy to get it sorted out.
So, oh, sorry, I was interrupting you, Deb. You can continue if you'd like.
Well, I was just going to say, along with that delayed sleep, insomnia can also happen as well. So, you start worrying, why can't I go to sleep? You get all that worry associated with it. And that can actually go on into adulthood as well.
I'm fascinated by this, and I'm sure you have an opinion on this, and I'd love to hear about how the current schooling system helps to reinforce or work against the hormonal shifts and circadian irregulation when it comes to development as a child.
Look, Paul, I recently had this client with a young boy at a private school, and I was absolutely amazed at his schedule. It was before school, an hour before school started, he had to be at school for sport 3 days a week. And on the other days, he had to be at school for debating. So I was like, and the parents had to travel, I think it was a 50-minute drive.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, well, any wonder this kid has got a sleep problem. So, I mean, we know that there are quite a few schools now that are starting times later for teenagers, for, when they get into that age, which is fantastic, because as a parent, you're often wanting to wake your teens up, especially on the weekend. You think, get up, you're being lazy, there's jobs to be done. But the best thing you can be doing for them is letting them have that hour or hour and a half in bed as a catch up.
So, sorry, I'm completely dominating this.
It's good.
Because I'm so fascinated by this, because I just remember growing up in school. I've always been a relatively early riser, like a lot earlier now than I was in high school. But there was some kids in my school that literally slept in high school and past high school till midday. And I just
crack of noon.
it actually blew my mind. It blew my mind. Through university, they would sleep through till midday, and I'm like, I just couldn't get my head around it. Is there? And I don't think they went to sleep at 2 o'clock in the morning either. Like, they just slept for a really long time.
Well, first of all, we know that too much sleep is just as bad for you as too little sleep.
You expand on that? What does that look like scientifically?
That looks like exactly the same as the comorbidities that you can develop when you're not getting enough sleep. We know that lying in bed for too long is not good for your heart. It's not good for your vessels. It's not good for your muscles. Too much sleep is bad for you.
That makes sense.
Getting back to your point, you'd have to ask, well, really, what is going on with people that do sleep until midday? Do they have sleep apnea and they're just so fatigued that they're so tired that it's a struggle to get out of bed? Or do they just have delayed sleep-wake phase disorder, which is carried on through into those, early adult years, and they physically can't get out of bed because they're getting actually their full night's sleep. They might be getting 8 or 9 hours, but they're just starting it off later in the night.
Got it.
Deb, do the needs of sleep change between the sexes? I'm speaking purely from the adolescence perspective first, but then also towards adulthood as well. Do you see teenage girls and boys needing different sorts of things when it comes to their sleep, and then does that stay consistent into adulthood?
Do you mean in reference to who's going to have a sleep problem or not of the sexes?
No, not in terms of who's going to have a problem, but more just like, would boys need more or less sleep than girls, and do the biological changes that occur during adolescence have an impact on that?
No, there's no girls need this much and boys need that much. No, it's all the same. Okay. We know that sleep does change the older you get. You need less sleep the older you get. And unfortunately, the older you get is when you see people, left in beds in nursing homes and encouraging them to sleep all day. So, again, comorbidities hugely rise with staying in bed too long.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a shame. And even something like dementia as well, because I know dementia is associated with sleep deprivation.
Yeah, that's right. Just because when you're sleeping, all those great things that are going in your body are not happening when you're not getting enough sleep. And certainly not being able to get rid of those toxins in your body because you're not having adequate sleep they're now finding that, that can contribute towards developing dementia.
I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but can we talk really, really briefly about what does happen in your brain when you go through those sleep cycles in terms of disposing of waste in your brain and replenishing your brain hormonally and et cetera, et cetera?
Sure. So basically what happens if you split your sleep into two, the first half and the second half, in the first half is when you get the most deep sleep happening. And that's when you're getting all that good physical stuff occurring. So your body is eliminating toxins, it's regenerating new cells, it's repairing. All that physicality, we'll call it, happens in the first part of sleep. In the second part of sleep, it's all the brain stuff. So it's all about having your brain be able to recall what you've learnt during the day, being able to consolidate what you've learnt to memory, and regulate your emotions. So all the mental health stuff in the second part, and that occurs because we do REM sleep, which is dream sleep, in the second half of the night.
Very cool.
This is going to be a nice segue into an area that I'm particularly fascinated with, Deb, which is dreams and dreaming. I fell in love with psychotherapy and counseling, sort of from a Jungian side of things. I started to read a lot of Carl Jung, and I became really interested in dream analysis. And sometimes you can sort of follow your own tail a little bit when you do too much of it. But I have learned a lot about myself from my own dreams, whether I'm just creating meaning or discovering it, obviously I can't tell. I think what I do know for sure is that it's a passion. But so I had some Thai food last night, and it was good. It was really good. But my partner and I both had horrible nightmares. I was dreaming about sort of demons and ghosts and all this sort of stuff. And I can't remember what she was dreaming about in particular, but she definitely said it was a nightmare. Is there anything to this? Is there anything? I remember maybe it's an old wives' tale that's like if you eat too much cheese, you'll have a nightmare or something like that. But can you tell us what you know about dreams? I suppose from a scientific perspective and from the benefit of sleep as well.
I don't know if there's a preference for certain foods initiating any kinds of dreams in particular, but if you had spicy food, then yes, that is going to affect your sleep.
Yes.
So, and for you, that's happened during your REM stages.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So dream recall, dreams happen during REM?
Dreams are during REM sleep, rapid eye movement.
Yeah, cool.
And it's a state of being where we're unconscious. Otherwise, we might be acting out our dreams, which we certainly don't want to do. So even though our body is in an unconscious state, our mind is super active. And if you wake up within that, I think it's a really short period of a minute or two of ending a dream. That's why you're able to recall it. But if you wake up longer after that, then usually people will say, oh, I never recall my dreams. Well, they've just woken up too late after the dream's finished.
I remember reading in so what got me interested in sleep was Dr. Matthew Walker, the sleep researcher who wrote Why We Sleep. It was fascinating. It was a giant book, but it was a fascinating book. I remember reading about what alcohol does, and there's basically no positive association with alcohol when it comes to sleep, as we can all probably intuitively, assume. But there was something particularly interesting in that book where he said that, there are a lot of people who will sort of anecdotally mention that they have crazy dreams when they've been drinking a lot, and he was talking about how when you drink a lot, the body works to get rid of that toxin. So then it sort of floods REM sleep or something to that effect. And you have these crazy dreams. It's trying to rush back and take back all of what it needs from stages 3 and 4. It's a bit of a tangent to the actual question I want to ask here, Deb, but should we be thinking about prioritizing, not that we can, but is one stage of sleep better than the other? Is that how we should be thinking about this, or what should we be seeing this like?
No, they're all important. The first half is for your physical health and the second half is for your mental health. You couldn't prioritize one over the other.
Right.
I forgot what I was going to say now.
Put you on
Yeah,
the spot.
it's gone.
So
Interesting.
along that theme, are there things or are there practices that you can undertake that are simple, that you can undertake to either prioritize your, like let's say you do a sleep study and you realize that you're dominant in deep sleep and you're underdominant in REM. Are there practices that you can undertake to be able to boost your REM and vice versa?
Certainly, we know that alcohol, anything that has that sedative effect, is going to help you fall asleep because it makes you sleepy. It's like a sedative effect. Same with sleeping pills, but we know that they disrupt the second part of your sleep. So REM sleep doesn't happen as well as it should. And that goes across really anything that you take, whether it's something like a sleeping pill to, help you fall asleep easier, it's going to disrupt the second half of your sleep. Any caffeine, it doesn't have to be, any caffeine drink will do the same thing. So caffeine will, give you that wake up feeling. And because it's cumulative over the course of how many times you take it over the day, and has a half-life of 4 to 6 hours, it means that by the time you go to sleep, you can still have quite a lot of caffeine on board. So all of these things that you take either to help you stay awake or help you go to sleep have some effect.
Got it.
Yeah.
Go for it, Tom.
I just think that's a really good segue into taking a clinical approach to the podcast now. So what you do and sort of how you help people sleep better quality, more efficient sleep, not only from people that have sleep disorders, but for the people who just want to optimize their sleep. Perhaps we can go through, I know you sort of touched on some of these before, Deb, but perhaps we can go through all of the different ways people can get better sleep based upon what they shouldn't be doing and also then what they should be doing.
Sure. One of the most effective things for you to do is to get outside as much as possible, because the waves, the colors that are in the light spectrum are conducive to keeping your circadian rhythm on track and also for consolidating your night sleep. So very important. If you've got problems with your circadian rhythm, getting outside as soon as you wake up and combining that with some exercise. Can be a walk. It doesn't have to go out and push weights or anything. Any outside time is so beneficial. And, we do spend a lot of time inside. And we certainly see kids spending a lot of time inside. So it's very important to get outside.
Is there a particular time in the day that you recommend being outside more than others?
Look, depending on what sort of problem you've got, certainly if you had a circadian problem, one of the treatments would be outside light, which would be timed and different every single day. And that's why when you've got some of the sleep problems that you do have, it's not a matter of doing one thing that's going to make a change. It's a matter of doing a whole lot of things that are going to get you to sleep better. But certainly one of the simplest things, it's free. It's, outside, go outside.
Sunglasses.
That's a good question.
That's all I'm going to say.
All right. But don't sunglasses actually prevent the light from coming in? Doesn't that offset what we're trying to get at?
So if you're a night shift worker and you want to go home and sleep fairly soon when you get home, wear sunglasses because the bright light influences the nerves in your eyes, which run very closely in the center of your brain to the sleep center.
So at the end of your shift, if you are coming out when it's daylight, you want to be wearing sunglasses because that's going to block the.
Yeah, you want melatonin is influenced by dim light. So you want to encourage melatonin to be released.
And and the inverse to that, if you were hoping to regulate your sleeping pattern, is there something you can do with light to be at, like if you're a shift worker, is there something you can do with light at a particular time in the day?
I think the main thing is to realize that light is either going to help you wake up. So if you wake up feeling sluggish, go outside and get some outside light. It'll help wake you up. And if you're preparing to go to sleep, dim light is effective. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really condensing it down to really basic stuff.
Yeah, sure.
But I guess too, you probably have heard, and you'll hear this all the time, you should go to bed and get up at the same time every day. And that is the best advice for good sleepers, okay? So the thing that you should pay attention to is good sleepers, because generally that's what they do. They know their ideal bedtime. They try to stay within a half an hour or so of that ideal bedtime, and they wake up at the same time. But if you're a problematic sleeper, going to bed at the same time and getting up at the same time is not necessarily going to fix your problem, because you need to address the problem first.
That brings me to a question I have. I remember I had a client, Deb, who I was in private practice at the time, and he came in and he had health anxiety. So his symptom was health anxiety, and he would wake up and he'd be, checking his heart, and, it was really affecting his sleep. And I found myself thinking about the benefit of cognitive behavioral therapy, or any sort of, cognitive approach, as opposed to some of the more preventative measures that we're talking about here. Now, obviously, health anxiety is a specific thing in and of itself that has nuance and can be, attacked in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're actually talking about disorders now, and we're talking about insomnia and all these sorts of things, how important is something like cognitive behavioral therapy, or therapy in itself, as opposed to just some of these more preventative measures like getting light at the right time and regular sleep time?
Yeah. So, I mean, you're really comparing the cognitive stuff with sleep hygiene, I guess.
Right.
We'll call it under that umbrella. I mean, they all go hand in hand. But the thing is that the point of difference is cognitive behavioral therapy is different from cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. Okay, that's the main difference. So when you've got the insomnia part added on, that's the really nuanced therapies that help cure insomnia. And unfortunately, that's why most people, we know that there's not enough people in the country that are trained in CBTI. And that's why a lot of people don't actually get their sleep sorted, because they're not getting that nuanced therapy.
Can you break down briefly? I know this is a very simplistic question based on I'm sure it's an elaborate response, but the difference between cognitive behavioral therapy and the sleep variation of it.
Sorry, I missed the question part.
The difference between CBT and CBTI, was it?
Yeah. Okay. So CBT is going to have a strong focus on relaxation, some of the cognitive thoughts around learning how to calm down, not be feeling stressed, techniques to help with that anxiety. It might include some hypnotherapy. CBTI is specifically uses things like sleep restriction therapy, circadian therapies that help if you've got delayed sleep-wake phase or advanced. Mm-hmm. So some people have the opposite. They have early sleep-wake phase where they can't stay up at night. They're in bed at 8:30, and then they wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. So again, that is a specific therapy that needs a treatment to get that back. So I guess really it's more involved. Not to say that when you do CBTI, you definitely use some of the things that just the cognitive behavioral therapists will use, but they don't have the training in that more in-depth kind of stuff.
Wow. How bad can sleep disorders get, Deb? This is an area I know nothing about.
How bad can they get? Oh my gosh. I mean, the propensity of anxiety and depression is absolutely huge when you're not getting enough sleep. And some of the people that do treat those disorders are now looking at getting sleep corrected as the first line of treatment rather than going on to, pills.
Yes. Yes.
Wonderful.
Which is great.
It is good. It is good. I remember reading that from Lost Connections, where you look at the difference between how effective an SSRI can be in comparison to a good night's sleep. I think the measure was sort of like on the depression scale, the 51 item scale, Hamilton depression, something like, I can't remember exactly. Is that right? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do, but it's not Hamilton. It's
No.
left my mind at the moment, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But just how much better for you a good night's sleep is, But I wonder if so with sleep disorders, from what you see in your work, are they usually things that occur within themselves, or are they actually the result of some underlying issue, whether it's circumstantial, biological, what is it, biopsychosocial model? Are they things that occur within themselves, or are there other factors?
Look, I think from what I see, most behaviors, something will cause the sleep to change, and then that will become a learned behavior. And people don't know how to get themselves, to unlearn that and learn new stuff. And, I have people that I've spoken to that are doing absolutely 100% right. They've given up caffeine, they've given up alcohol, they're going to bed at the same time, they're getting up at the same time, they're exercising, they're eating well, they're doing 100% everything that you think you should be the best sleeper in the world, but they have insomnia.
God, yeah.
And is there hope for them?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's where they would be, you'd be doing CBTI with that kind of problem.
I see. You mentioned early on in your journey in sleep therapy, you were trained in music. Both Tom and myself are musicians.
Well, you're a lot better than me, by the way. But yes,
no. We're both we're both musicians, and we have a keen interest in music. And I'm fascinated to hear what you've learned about music composition and sleep, because that's cool.
Yeah, look, the piece of music that I composed is very different from anything else that's out there. It's a combination of lyrics and instrumental, which the instrumental has like a meditation effect. So a repetition of the melody. And we know that when you listen to music, those lyrics that have repetition are the ones that you remember.
Mm-hmm.
You recognize them instantly. They're the songs that you'll be humming, 20 years later, you'll hear it and you'll instantly be able to recognize that tune and even sing those lyrics. So I guess without really knowing what I was doing, I managed to tap into all the right things because I was very early in my music education. I had no music education at school, and just managed to find the right resource to help me. And I'm very probably proud to say that little baby that I composed that music for is now my 16-year-old, who is a pianist and very keen on a music career. So it's had some really lovely developments just from having that piece of music around.
That's incredible. And do you feel like there was a contribution of his exposure to music at such a young age so consistently that has...
Yeah, absolutely. The other children didn't have anything like that, and they're definitely not musicians. And no interest in, doing anything like that. But I guess he turned one when my family bought me a keyboard for my birthday, and I played at home for a year, and then I went on to, do professional lessons. And he started as a 4-year-old turning 5. So he's been, we both still go to the same teacher who's helped us along our music journey. So
Wow.
reading music and composing. Yeah.
That's really cool. And uh, is there how much research is and I don't know what I know it's not your main wheelhouse, but like right now, but how much research has gone into the influence of music from a brainwave perspective and the translation from musical notes?
Yeah. So much. There is so much research on the benefits of music. Like it is mind-blowing. That's why there are committees and researchers that are so intent on getting music back into every single school in our country, because we know the effects of it, enhancing learning, enhancing memory, the social side of it, the fact that it produces dopamine, it makes you feel happy. There are so many advantages to it, and unfortunately, a lot of schools have decided to drop music in their curriculum, which is so sad.
It is.
Paulie, do you remember? Can't remember which episode it was, but someone on the show said that. Oh, I've lost his name, but I know. I reckon it was the guy, a mate of yours, that was the singer. Yes,
Podge, yeah,
yes.
that
Do you
musical.
remember he said that he uh music is so good for us because when we're in the womb, we sort of mimic or we become very used to the heartbeat.
Yep.
Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Deb, is there
I do.
anything to that?
Oh, well, it makes sense. Very rhythmical, right?
It is rhythmical, but we know that babies have in that third trimester, or when their hearing's developing a long time before the third trimester, but by the third trimester, they also develop memory. So what they're hearing in utero, if parents are exposing them to music, they're going to hear those rhythms. And if they hear that same music, and there's been studies done on actually using lullabies for babies when they're in utero, if they hear that same music, now it could even be a football song if that was the way you wanted to go, then they would remember that as long as it's played within that first month of birth, they'll still have a memory to it. After that first month, that memory goes.
That's
So that's pretty amazing that your baby knows and hears what's going on when they're not even born.
Yeah.
Like our eldest, and I don't know, I have no idea whether this is like our eldest daughter when my wife was 39 weeks pregnant. We were in the front row of the Paul McCartney concert, and she loves the Beatles.
Does she?
Loves them.
But does she love the Wings?
She likes them both.
She likes them both.
That's amazing. I remember when I was pregnant with my older son, I saw the wind had grabbed hold of a door, and I knew it was about to slam really loudly. So I had no fear because I could see it coming. But when it slammed, the baby did a triple somersault in utero.
Oh yeah.
Oh, wow.
So the noise really frightened him.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is he still triggered by that now? Like, have you ever spoken about that?
I don't know. I'll have to ask him.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. We'll have to get you back on the show and ask. That's fascinating.
Yeah, look, music is absolutely wonderful. I often, tune in on when I hear of, musos and other artists that have had tragic ends to their life and, been full of all sorts of drugs to, wind them up, to bring them down, alcohol. And I think, oh gosh, I wonder, if sleep was your initial problem and you just needed to you started taking meds because you needed to go to sleep, and then your busy schedules and marketing and promotion meant you have to be up in the morning, so you need something to help you wake up. So you start taking uppers to get you through the day. Gosh, I'd love to tap into that, all those people out there that could do with some guidance in sleep, because what a terrible waste of talent to end your life on all those things.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, sorry, Paulie.
I was just going to say it's a great subsect of people to be able to serve, not just musicians, but like obviously musicians are their job is during the night. So, and people don't know what they don't know, right? So if they just feel like there's something wrong with them as an individual, as opposed to what they're doing as a job is actually bringing them out of sync with themselves. Be able to have someone to guide them. Likewise, shift workers like doctors that are working at nighttime, and it's no secret that the medical profession suffers as well from a significant amount of anxiety and depression. And I think obviously it's a very stressful job, but I think the role of shift working would be a really, really big contributor to that.
Yeah, absolutely. It always surprises me that the health industry, which should be about prioritizing health, actually does, the worst things for their employees by putting them on shifts that are constantly changing and this perpetuating jet lag day in, day out, where they could be, we can't get away from the fact that we need to have medical providers and other ancillary staff on at nighttime. But to be able to group together those shifts so that you did 3 months or 4 months of night shift and then you went back onto normal life, rather than having these rotating shifts of day, evenings, nights happening within every fortnight, just blows my mind away.
Yeah, I feel like it'll evolve soon enough. Sorry, Tom, go ahead.
No, I wanted to bring it back, and then I know I feel like this podcast we've just almost been like interrogating you, Deb. We probably should have mentioned before that we're really interested in what you have to say. So if you don't mind, make sure you have a coffee because we're going to be going at
really
it.
I'm having so much fun. I can tell you, this is just
good.
so much fun.
Oh, good. We're
Bring it
loving
on.
it too. Yeah, that's great. No, I was thinking before about what you said. As Paulie mentioned earlier, we both have a very deep love of music, but I'd say creativity, more generally speaking. I have a particular love of the 90s grunge music, but even the 60s as well. Paulie and I love, and you mentioned before, a lot of artists who died young, the 27 group, Kurt Cobain and Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin, all these horrible deaths, Jim Morrison. I remember reading research recently that showed links between creativity and mental health disorders like bipolar. And I think one of the coolest things about creativity, sort of what pulls me to it, is the mystery and the enigma of these people who are, like Van Gogh is my favorite painter because he was so tormented, and he was so hurt, and he produced these amazing things that sort of like almost demonstrate to me that he was really on the peripherals of what we see, and he was sort of stood beyond the bounds of like society, but also the great mystery and beyond. Do you think now this is aside from what you do for work? I'm sort of interested in your philosophy and almost spiritual approach here now. I wonder if helping them regulate their sleep would take away from the art and the mystery. What do you think about that?
Well, I actually don't think it would. I think that that's kind of a bit of a myth that a lot of creative people think they need to do A, B, C, D because that's when they're most creative. But in actual fact, if your brain is working and your body is healthy and you're doing all the right things and getting the right amount of sleep, you're going to have so much more creative opportunity. Your health is going to be so much better. So I'm a firm believer in good health. And I really believe that we have to be accountable for our health.
Yes, I love that you said that. Like one of my best friends, he's a writer. One of his articles is, "You don't need to suffer to make great art." So I love that you said that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I think that's quite similar to like the first thing that comes to me from a health perspective is the elevation of cortisol levels, right? So if you're there are a whole bunch of negative associations that the general public has with cortisol, right? And then all of a sudden cortisol is being demonized, but that's not necessarily where we need it to be. What we need is the ability to be able to turn on cortisol and turn it off at will, or to be able to have that control over it. So perhaps if you have greater to draw a really, really long delineation between that and what you guys were talking about, it's like if you have control of your sleep, you have control of your health, then maybe you have greater control over your on-off switch when it comes to creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that particularly working with parents, because I work a lot with, pediatric age group, that when kids learn to sleep better, their emotional regulation improves dramatically. Yeah. And I think that's probably true of anybody that's getting better sleep. Their emotional regulation just improves so much. Yeah. And we need to have emotional regulation. It's the thing that keeps us safe. Without it, we turn to other alternatives, drugs, alcohol, any other thing.
Yelling at your kids. I'll tell you right now, two nights ago, I was not a good dad.
That's their fault, right, Paul?
Completely. No. It was like, it was unbelievable. That 5 hours or under of sleep. And I was like, lock me up. This is not, yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. But, the stories that I hear, the way people function without sleep, I am absolutely floored as to how they even survive.
Yeah.
Yep. Just as a last point before we do wrap up, because I feel like we're getting towards that point, sadly. Michael Bruce was the author of The Power of When. He's a PhD.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, he was the bear and
that's the guy,
the fox and all those other things.
All the different animals that are irrelevant now that we know.
Yeah. Can I ask you guys a question before we do wrap up?
Yeah,
of course.
We've got time. What's your feeling on blue light? Or your thoughts?
For me, much like the discussion that we just had about creativity and cortisol, there's a time and a place. It's like a part of our lives. It's emitted in daylight. It's emitted in and it, from what I can gather, it's emits a response of elevation of cortisol and a whole bunch of different productivity hormones that make you be really, really useful throughout the day. I think the overuse of it with technology that as I understand, can cause harm, and it can cause interruptions with your sleep cycles. But I would never say blue light is a bad thing.
Yeah. I think I'm the same. I think it's more about like how much and when, as opposed to like if it's good or not. And I'm not the expert here, but anecdotally, I've found that when I get it in early, and then sort of when the sun goes down, my partner Siobhan, Deb, just so you know, loves biohacking, productivity. She's obsessed with this sort of stuff. So just before, actually, we're having we drink cacao, so we're not on caffeine at the moment. We're doing a bit of a gut thing. But she was like, oh, so who's your podcast today with? And I was like, oh, and I just kind of like leaned in. I was like, a sleep expert. She was on her phone. She goes, 9 questions thrown at me all at once. So she'll be looking forward to this one very much. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But I agree with Paulie. I think the more blue light I get in the morning, it tends to be okay. And then beyond sort of 2, 3, 4 p.m., I'm starting to sort of not just shut it down completely, but especially when the sun goes down, starting to really reduce it.
Okay. Well, first of all, yeah, you're right. Blue light's naturally out there. We need exposure, and hence being outside and getting exposed to those different elements of the light spectrum is good. And also that early morning light helps to safeguard us from the negative effects that blue light might have during our sleep. But one of the biggest myths of all time, I'm going to say of all time, it's probably a bit of an exaggeration, is that blue light should be blocked from your screens because it prevents you falling asleep.
Okay.
The research is so underwhelming to support that.
Really?
It's about 3 minutes difference it makes to you falling asleep. And who cares about 3 minutes? Right. Nobody.
So you can be, in other words, as far as you're concerned, you can be on your computer, you can be on your phone before you go to sleep, and
Yeah.
not have any meaningful impact on the amount of time and or the
No.
quality you get.
Wow.
The light is not strong enough to impact your circadian rhythm, to push it back, to change it. Outside light, it has to be outside light, always outside light. That is the strongest light that impacts your sleep.
So, which the natural next question I have for you then is all those seasonal disorder lamps and things like that they have in northern Scandinavia during the winter months. Do they have an impact on people's ability to kind of regulate during those months?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we would do for some of those sleep disorders that are about sleep timing is using, if we couldn't have access to outside light, we'd be using lamps that have got the right power or the right intensity to be able to change circadian rhythms.
So the lux
yeah,
of those lamps are far greater than ones on a screen.
Yeah, it's about, I think I might be wrong on this, but I think it's around 100,000 lux for daylight, and then it goes up much more when the sun's shining.
Yeah.
And the emission from an iPad is about 300.
Oh, wow.
So it's never going to be bright enough. Now, that doesn't mean to say that screens, for some people, screens, particularly if they get into a state of flow, and I don't know if you've heard that before, but when they get into that, they miss their sleep cues and then they just can't turn it off. Those people are going to have a poor night's sleep because they're not going to get enough sleep. But for the average person that watches TV or watches a screen right up till bedtime, switches it off and goes to sleep, no problem.
That's interesting. So I wonder then if it's not so much the light that is the factor, or if there is any factor at all, more so what was going on the screen and how it was sort of modulating dopamine and things.
It's absolutely. The researchers don't really know who are going to be those people that are more inclined to get into the flow state. They're yet to figure out who are. And we've all done it. We've all watched something and binged on it and not been able to turn it off. And every episode ends in a cliffhanger and you just got to watch the next one.
Yes.
But for the most of us, we learn by that experience, and the next day it's like, oh, that was not a good idea to stay up till 1 o'clock. I mean, 1 o'clock would be so late. I'm an early bird, so, but there are that portion of people that can't switch it off, and then that becomes a habit, and then their circadian rhythm changes so that they don't feel inclined to go to sleep in a good hour, before midnight, let's say, and then they become the people that are falling asleep at 3 or 4 or 5 in the morning, sleeping through the day, and their whole life is different.
Yeah. I want to thank you so much for coming on and having a really great chat to us about the science behind sleep. And it's been eye-opening. It really has. It's been really wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. As I said before, it's just been so much fun. Love to come back and chat anytime.
Yeah. No, we'd love to have you, Deb. And for all those interested to hear more about you and perhaps even see you, where can people find you?
They can go to Nigh Nigh, nigh.com.au. If you've got any questions you want to ask, book in for a free sleep chat. I offer people any help that I can, and always happy to have a chat. Won't cost you anything.
Except good sleep, right?
That's it.
Bad sleep.
Bad sleep.
Bad sleep, exactly. That's the point. Yeah. Awesome, Deb. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Paul.